get a good crowd, but I don't think it's a big issue for this evening. There are some ground, unfortunately, we don't take comments from the audience. And sometimes I think people believe that council makes decisions, workshops are specifically designed for education, and no decisions will be made. With that, our first item of business is Mr. Ball. Welcome, by the way.
Yeah, thank you very much. Seriously, thank you. Genuinely, I said this last meeting. Really appreciate the generosity of allowing us this time in your workshop. So thank you, council. I want to introduce. I'm actually not going to be speaking very much this week. I feel like you've heard a lot from me, and rather hear from a few other more interesting folks. So I want to introduce some of the folks who are going to be sharing this evening. With us this evening, we have our, some of you have the chance to see our feasibility study. Our public market consultant, Aaron Zaretsky, who was Pike Place Director for 15 years and has been consulting on public markets for 25 years. Aaron Zaretsky is here with us, and he'll be part of our presentation. And then additionally, Mark Lambert, who is the developer of the Crown Group, who has been working on this project in tandem for the last year and a half and been in discussion with the city. He's here and will be part of the presentation. And additionally, two members of the nonprofit we've established in order to fundraise for building a public market are here. Dr. Jillian Cadwell is here, and Brad Brew are here, and we're very grateful to have the two of them. And with that, I'm gonna hand it to Jillian to get us started.
Well, thank you everyone for lending us your ears and for your time. So I'm Jillian Cadwell. I was raised in Hood River, Oregon, went to Gonzaga to attain my civil engineering degree and later worked there as a professor. 5 years ago, I gave up a tenure track position at Gonzaga to live in the Tri-Cities with my husband John and his family. My passion around the public market stems from my love for the atmosphere and community building that it would afford. Frankly, the only place I have to go when I visit Seattle is Pike's Place. I really love that, the scene there. I'd rather have that type of experience here at home than have to travel all the way to Seattle. I loved if my two children thought that the Tri-Cities was so hip that they wanted to raise their own children here and stay here rather than going off to places like Portland or Seattle, because I think that this is a really great place to be. So that's my personal goal. Let's talk about the holistic goals of the market. So, the first goal, create a heart and soul for Richland that brings energy and entrepreneurial opportunities for the benefit of the whole Tri-Cities. Develop the #1 tourist attraction in Eastern Washington right here in Richland. Spark $100 million plus in new private investment in downtown Richland over the next 10 years. Spur the creation of a dynamic residential community in downtown Richland. Increase tax revenue and property value for Richland's Central Business District. Make creating the public market Richland's most celebrated decision this century. Why does Richland need this? Tri-Cities' most central downtown is on a waterfront, yet it's been underdeveloped for ages. We have a graph here that shows on the left vertical art-related businesses, and on the right is art-related businesses normalized by 1,000 businesses, so divided by 1,000 businesses. And if you look at the black line there, that's for the United States on average, the green is Washington State on average, and the blue is the Tri-Cities. So that's art, those three lines are art-related businesses per 1,000 businesses, and you can see that we're at about half the state and national average. Then if you look at the yellow bars, that's the actual number of businesses you have in the Tri-Cities that are art-related. 2004 you see is a peak at about 30, and then we've got this steady decline through into 2013, and we've had a few added in 2016. Okay.
Can I stop you?
Yes.
Something like that. Art-related businesses, what does that mean?
Yes, great question. I have the answer to that. Let me just give you the list here. I had that same question, so I'm glad you asked. Art-related businesses include art galleries, camera and photographic supply stores, bookstores, bookstores, performing arts companies, performing arts promoters, independent artists, writers and performers, musical instrument stores, compact disc and record stores, and museums. So when I mentioned a couple were added, we've had 2 art galleries added and the Reach. Okay. So Richland badly needs a meaty project in order to jumpstart downtown development. A public market will help the Tri-Cities recruit and retain cream of young professionals. It's also a place that will help retain our kids. They may feel happier to stay in this wonderful area rather than leave for hit places like I mentioned, Portland, Seattle being the main ones it seems like that we've seen. Okay, one more thing. A market will make food, restaurant, and art-related small businesses sustainable both within and around the market. We have a personal story from a woman named Ashley. You may recognize her French macarons here. They're pretty popular in and around the Tri-Cities. Her products are acclaimed at first rate. She currently works as a manager at Starbucks. Ashley says that operating and growing my business in the Tri-Cities full-time as my sole income would actually become possible with a public market. So, Starbucks and many other multi-billion-dollar businesses started as mom-and-pop stores in public markets. What could the Tri-Cities create if we had a market that let our small businesses bloom? And to answer that question, we have Aaron Zaretsky. He conducted this feasibility study. I want to talk about you for just a second, Aaron. The Crown Group looked for that's our developer, looked for an extremely qualified and knowledgeable consultant to work with on developing the public market. After interviewing potential consultants, Aaron Zaretsky was chosen hands down. He's the former director of Pike's Place, as you know, and was involved in its revitalization in the 1970s, which had a transformative impact on downtown Seattle. When Aaron left Pike Place after 14 years, former mayor of Seattle, Norman Rice, had this to say: "Your work has not only been key to preserving and helping to rejuvenate the market, but more than anyone I can think of, you have been responsible for giving meaning to the saying, the Pike Place Market is the heart and soul to Seattle." For over a decade, the market has relied on your leadership as a developer, planner, fundraiser, and administrator. The market has grown up and flourished during your tenure. For the past 25 years, Aaron has consulted on dozens of public market projects and helped raise $100 million in grants for public market projects. Sorry, $100.
That part was easy.
Richland's own development consultant, Roger Brooks, relies on Aaron's expertise when it comes to the topic of public markets. You all have the 60-page feasibility study and site analysis report on your desk there. And that is from the time he spent this past summer here in Tri-Cities. We're honored that Aaron has flown out to join us today, and we hope to make the public market a reality together. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you. First of all, let me echo everyone else's appreciation for your all taking the time and taking this seriously. I think that I worked on helping to plan, develop, manage, or redevelop about 40 different public markets. And there's some things about Richland that are really unique and really special that I've never run into before. The first thing that I want to say is we have a treasure in Adam and in Mark. I've worked with lots of private developers, and it has been such a pleasure to work with people who really who understand private development, who are driven entrepreneurs, but really care about the community and have the public good at heart and know how to make things happen. So I just want to say that. The other thing is that having a nonprofit in place, having the community so engaged about this project at this stage of the project, I've never seen before in all of the 40 projects that I've done. This is highly unusual to have people so excited, so think you have a real opportunity here to make something very special happen. One quick thing is, you've got in your packets a 6-page or 8-page summary that'll go into much more depth than I'm about to go into, answering some of the questions that these slides highlight. On there is my phone number. Feel free to email me or call me with any questions as you read it, if you're at all concerned. My address is at the top. So, so the first question is, what are the economic benefits? There we go. I think that other public markets that are about the same size as the one that is proposed for Richland have yielded about $500,000 a year in newly generated tax revenues. That's only a small part of the economic benefit. Public markets have been found to be the best generator of new jobs, of any capital investment for any public project. They've been found by something called the Office of Technological Assessment in response to a $6 million grant that we received when I was at Pike Place Market. There's also a tremendous impact on surrounding development. That, if you think about what Pike Place Market was before the renovation, it was the term that, the term Skid Road, that's what downtown Seattle was. Today, it is the premier, the most successful public market downtown in the country, and anyone who is familiar with it will credit Pike Place Market with that transformation. There's one of the things that we look very hard at is where the best place to locate the public market would be. And it really was no contest. We looked at several different locations. The reason why the 650 George Washington Way site made the most sense was, one, it's the gateway to the city; two, it's highly visible; three, it's sort of nobody's turf, which means it can become everybody's turf. Even though it's in Richland, for the market to succeed, it cannot be a Richland public market. It needs to be a Tri-Cities public market. And that location is perfect because it really spans all three communities. It'll be, the benefits will clearly accrue to the city of Richland more than anyone else, but it needs to draw customers and needs to draw traffic from the 250,000 people who live within a 15-20 minute drive, as well as the 250,000 people who visit, who are tourists on an annual basis. I think that I was actually a little surprised to hear of the proposal to put the market in Howard Inman Park. I think Howard Inman Park is a treasure and is really an incredible resource for the community. But one of the many very critical and important benefits for having a public market to begin with is that it generates surrounding development. It increases your tax base. It leverages private development. And the surrounding trees in Howard Inman Park aren't going to pay taxes. They're not going to create new jobs and new businesses. And you totally lose the impact of why you would do a market to begin with. The other thing is that because it's a little bit out of the way, it makes it much more likely to be more of a Richland public market as opposed to a Tri-Cities public market, which I don't think that it would have nearly the ability to succeed unless it was a truly regional facility, which I think can and should be. How much would the market cost is going to be addressed by Mark, and I'll be back later to address some other issues.
As I stated, I'm Mark Lambert, president of the Crown Group, and our company is about about 32 years old, and I've been in the commercial real estate business for about 42 years. And we've done about $500 million of various projects of all different kinds of product types. And when I first came to Richland about 3 years ago, I drove by this site, and I wasn't even necessarily looking for something to do, but when I saw it, it's like, wow, what a great site. And as many people know, Adam and I started working together, and we looked at various site plans of putting retail strip in the front, office, apartments, and everything always seemed to be constrained by parking availability in order to maximize the density on the site. And so we were starting to narrow things down to not, to a site plan that would work and it would be better than what's there now. But then through a conversation that Adam was having, he said, well, why not consider a public market? And just kind of like a light bulb went off, like, wow, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. So not knowing a whole lot about public markets, I took it upon myself to have to go visit Pike's Place. Tough, somebody has to do it though. But also visited the market in San Francisco, the market in Napa, Wenatchee, which isn't too far from here, and also Milwaukee, which isn't too far from my home base. And after researching it, it was like, yeah, that's really what this site needs. And if all works out, we can also maximize that density that we were talking about and put other things in conjunction with the market and really make it a viable location, kind of like a mini Pike's Market. So we have been working with a firm from, two firms from Portland, CSI Construction Company and TVA Architectural Company, both of which have been and are involved with the Innovation Lofts just north of town, so they're familiar with your community and have an interest here. And so based on that, we estimated that the initial cost for the public market would be about $9 million. And then there's a plaza area that we're now thinking about, which would be $1 million, and then underground parking would be $6 million. What private development would join in? Good question. Well, I somewhat just stated that, in that Adam's in need of new office space. So we've always been looking at one way or another of trying to incorporate approximately 25,000 square feet of office. And also, right now, we're thinking that apartments would really make sense here. And so we're looking at somewhere between 75 and 100 apartments. And the cost between those two items would be approximately $15 million. And what we're proposing at this point in time is that the city maintain ownership of the ground and the market, and that they sell us the air rights to do the office and apartments above it. And I guess one other thing I'll state now, it could come later, but I might as well say it now. When the idea of a market came up, we started working on it from a private perspective. We didn't know any better. So we were like, okay, let's design this 30,000 square foot building, and because once again parking was a constraint, we put parking, around the building, and it was a nice plan. Then we started looking at the cost for building that, and then we started looking at the rent that we have to get in order to justify private investment, and it didn't pencil out. And then, about that time we hire Aaron, and Aaron says, well, there's a reason they call it a public market. And we go, well, where were you when we were doing all this work? Yes, there I think Aaron probably are a couple exceptions in the country where they're privately owned. One which is in Napa, but then again, that's Napa. And but the vast majority of them, I'm sure, 90-some% are publicly owned and involved. process. Okay?
So, basically, public markets are not some newfangled idea. When they've done the archaeological digs in the Mesopotamian Valley, when people first lived in cities 6,000 years ago, the first thing they uncovered were the public market. It was the place that the community put its money in to build, to allow producers and consumers to come together and trade. And that has been a paradigm in Latin countries, it's the mercado. In Middle Eastern countries, it's the souk. It's really a forum that governments have supported all over the world. There's nothing new about it. They've been incredibly successful. In the 60s, there was this whole effort at urban renewal, or urban removal, as some people call it, and a lot of public markets were torn down. They were going to tear down Pike Place market, and there was a citizens initiative to save it. The city spent $250,000 fighting that initiative. It won by 85% to preserve it, and the mayor got on television the next day and said, "This is the best thing since chicken soup," and the rest is history. What makes public markets work, and the reason that they need public support, is they're like a tent over exclusively private for-profit businesses. The city is not running private businesses. All they're doing is they're allowing private businesses to be in a space where there's the synergy, where there's the training, where there's the special events, where there's the things like public health screenings and so forth that brings people to a central location that is exciting and dynamic and colorful and vibrant, and that allows markets to succeed. When you have businesses like Starbucks and Sur La Table, and there's a dozen of them that are multi-billion-dollar businesses, they all started as little mom and pop businesses at Pike Place Market. Because of the success at Pike Place Market, there's been 300 other public markets around the country that have been established, again, with public support, only including private for-profit businesses. This is not some kind of new form of socialism or anything else. The paradigm in economic development, the typical paradigm is people, when you drove to here, the city council, you drove on a road that was paid for with public dollars. The reason why the public invests in roads is because it's a utility that allows businesses to flourish. That's what a public market is. And it's the same as aqueducts or street signs or public art or roads. It's a utility that allows private for-profit businesses to flourish. It is not at all unusual for a private corporation to come to a city and say, "We're thinking about locating in your city, and we are going to provide 100 new jobs. We want you to spend X number of millions of dollars to extend roads and utilities and water, and give us 30 years of tax abatements and so forth, and we'll invest our funds and provide these jobs." In a public market, the thing about the George Washington Way site is you have that infrastructure in place. You don't have to build the roads. You don't have to bring in the utilities. You don't have to create the industrial park for it. Public markets are the most effective at creating new economic commerce, whether it's jobs, entrepreneurial opportunities, or surrounding leverage private development. You can take advantage of what has sat empty for 15 years and is really an eyesore at the gateway to your community, and turn it into, part of the reason that we've changed the original plan, which was a parking lot in front of the building, to a public plaza, is because we want people to enter Richland and see something colorful and exciting and fun and dynamic, rather than a hole in the ground. And I think you've got an opportunity to do something that is really special and unique. You know, there's really a gigantic alphabet soup, some of which I've actually helped to create, of city, county, state, regional, federal, private foundation, corporate, and individual funding that is available for public markets. I've never taken on a public market project. I've never seen a public market project that has not been able to raise money. Sometimes it takes a small amount of time, sometimes it takes a large amount of time, but if you stick with it, if there's a commitment on the part of the city, there's a commitment on the part of the community, and it's the right project, they've all been able to raise their funds. They don't need operating support. They need capital support to get them up and running. But once, if they're properly designed, and if I'm involved, this one will be properly designed, they will not need a dime of ongoing operating. So this is not something that people are gonna keep coming back to. The structure of this is that the city, I think, needs to retain control of the land, both for the parking and for the market. This needs to be a city-owned project. The city would then sell the air rights to Mark and Adam to do the private development. They're willing to contribute $15 million, and you're willing to spend $15 million to do that. Having apartments and first-rate office space in downtown Richland is huge. I mean, is a very important part of the growth and opportunity for the city to really develop a post-Hanford economy. And I think having the market on the ground floor, and I've done 4 projects, I guess, where you've had a public market with housing above. It's not, I mean, it's all been very, I mean, Pike Place Market, the housing is some of the most successful housing in the world on a $1 per square foot basis. It's a very common form of development, where the public market is public and the stuff above is private. We're not going to be able to raise any significant funds for this project unless there is a local commitment. Any potential grantor that you go to is going to want to know, what's the plan? Show me a picture. Let me see a business plan. How do you know this is going to work? And that's what a business plan is. It's about a 300-page document that really is the full description of how to get from a concept to reality. But you can't do a business plan until the city is nodding its head up and down saying, yes, we want to see this happen. Yes, we're committed to this. Yes, this is the location. I think if the city spends the next 6 months looking at different sites and playing around and doesn't take advantage of the opportunity that is in front of you, I think this probably is going to die and isn't going to happen. And so, I mean, I think that it's imperative that if the city doesn't want to do it, that's fine. You need to make that decision. But if you do want to do it, then you need to give the nonprofit the ability to start raising money. You need to contribute some funds toward making the initial planning happen. It's about $120,000 to complete all the planning. That gets you a business plan and a feasibility study, and the renderings of what it's going to look like, as well as kind of a schematic of the ground floor. That's what you need to be able to take to potential funders. You don't need full-blown working drawings, but you do need a concept that is more developed than a simple idea to get any kind of serious funding. So I think that I'll stop there and let, is it Brad? I'm sorry.
Am I next?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you again. I just want you to know how much I appreciate you guys' time, your service in the community. A little about me. I was born and raised here in Richland. My father was born and raised here in Richland. My grandfather came here in the early 40s from Lewiston, Idaho. He was actually part of the group that was a part of Days Pay. Gave up a day's wage for the Days Pay loaner. My family's very invested in this community. cities. I became a school teacher, taught here in Richland School Districts. We have 5 kids, aging from the range of 13 down to 2, all here, obviously. So very, very invested here in the community, and plan on spending my entire life here in the community. And many occasions, there are definite roundtable conversations in my family about Richland and what's happening in Richland and the future of Richland. And it's a very important topic, and I want you to know that I love Richland, and it's a very successful community, and that's because of people like yourself who put in a lot of hard effort and work in the community. But I do feel like we need something that is really going to boost us over the next 20, 30 years, and I don't feel like it's going to be the Hanford Project. The company that one of my main companies I own is Gale Roof Construction. You're probably familiar with that. You probably see the signs all over town. We complete over 200 remodels a year. 77% of our business is in Richland. And so I get an opportunity to talk to people about, why are you moving? Why do you want to make improvements and move to another city, or move to South Richland, or move to these areas? What's going on? And a common thing is that downtown Richland is becoming more of a rental base than it is more of a place where people want to move into downtown Richland and actually invest into these homes. Many people are saying, I'm going to put the minimum into my home because it's going to be a rental, and I go build my home out in West Cliff and other areas. And so I feel like that's an important thing that needs to get addressed, and I feel as though the public market is the answer for that in many reasons. I really feel like this community, Richland, should be about creativity, about ingenuity, about entrepreneurship. We have an amazing resource with Hanford area to partner with these companies that are national companies that can take some of our young entrepreneurs and catapult them into other areas. But it's also an area that's not going to last forever. And so the public market, to me, really fulfills a major need in creativity in Richland and entrepreneurship here in Richland. And I feel as though, with many conversations that I've had with a lot of people, that 650 G-Way is that location. Not only, like we've heard before, that it's the entrance to the city, but it's an entrance that creates a ton of traffic coming down that road from cities that are outside of it. Those people are coming in every day to work in the city, and they're seeing the public market there. And they're seeing how, wow, that's creative, how, everybody has those creative ideas they want to do, those businesses they want to run, and that market will inspire them to do those types of businesses. And they need to see that every day as they go by and understand that Richland is about creating those dreams, about creating those businesses. And that's why it needs to be there, because we're going to see it every day. If it's been put into the park, if it's put in the park, then no one's going to want to invest around that, because the city's not going to sell land next to that location. So we can't build up in that area. And if it's also in the park, we're not going to see it every day. So the traffic isn't going to be, and it's not going to create the type of atmosphere we want here in Richland. One of the things that I want to go over with you guys, and you guys have this in your plan, is you guys have created a plan from 2013 to 2017 that addresses your 7 keys, your 28 goals that you have. And one thing about the public market is it addresses most of those goals and keys that you have in there. And I think that's really important, because I really, as a resident of Richland, I really do want to know what the vision of this city is. And I want to be able to adapt my businesses and involvement that I have in this community with that goal, knowing where you guys are going. And I think that's crucial. And the fact that this market takes care of so many of those things is a very big deal. And I feel like it's a deal that's going to last a long time of fantastic entrepreneurship and business activity in downtown Richland, where we need it the most. We have great developments happening up in Queensgate. We have great developments happening in the hills. We have new developments coming in Badger Mountain South, but we don't have that project in downtown Richland. And that's why downtown Richland is starting to turn into a rental community. We have space for apartment complexes, but we shouldn't be getting rid of our homes. We want people to reinvest into the business in Richland, reinvest into the homes in Richland, and that will help our community.
let's jump to
I
Aaron.
think I've about covered most of it, so I'm gonna come back to you. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. You know, you're facing an important issue, and I think you understand that, and I appreciate you taking the time to get educated about it. I heard a story this afternoon that I want to retell, because I think it really is very relevant to the decision that you're facing. It's a story from the mid-60s, where Allied Properties, the developer of the mall, came to Richmond and said, we want to put a mall here, we want you to invest some money in infrastructure to help support it. And Richmond said, no, we don't need that. And they went to Kennewick, and Kennewick said, yeah, let's go. And today, Kennewick collects $1.7 billion a year in sales tax revenue. Richmond collects $1 billion. So it's a $700 million deficit. That probably wasn't the right decision then. And what I'm pleading is, think about that when you decide on whether to go forward with the public market. You have an opportunity to do something that is very exciting, that is proven throughout the country, that has really, really strong developers, that is not a huge ask. Nobody expects the city to come up with the full cost of the public market. We understand that Richland can't write a check for $9 million for a public market. It's not what this is about. What we are asking are the following. Number one, stop looking at 20 different sites for the public market. We've been doing this for 40 years. There's a reason why the 650 George Washington Way property works. We've already looked at lots of other sites that are not gonna work as well. Commit the GW site to the public market so that we can move forward. Number two, you need to develop a development agreement with the Crown Group that outlines what the city's willing to do, what the Crown Group's willing to do. Probably the nonprofit might need to be a part of that development agreement, but it needs to be a win-win situation that protects the city's interests, meets the city's goals, but also allows the Crown Group to make some money and creates an exciting space for the entire community. I think that, as I said before, you're not gonna raise a nickel for this project unless there is a plan. The business plan, the renderings, the kind of schematic, that level of initial planning has got to happen before any significant funder is gonna look at that. The cost for that is about $120,000. You're in an incredibly unusual situation. This is really the first time I've ever run into this, where the private nonprofit and the developer are saying, you know, if the city puts in 60, we'll put in 60. So, you know, that's the financial ask at this point in time, is to allow the planning for the market to go forward and to commit to working with the Crown Group to get this done, to turn their purchase and sale agreement into a development agreement that really isn't about a 4-month time period, but is about the several-year period that it's going to take to really make this a reality. I think that
Actually, Adam, slides 58, 59, and 60, I think we wanted to show them a little idea of what we're thinking of
there we
today.
go.
So, can you, start with the garage?
Yeah.
So this is just the first blush at what underground parking might look like. And as we were brainstorming today, and we were reminded that if we want some additional parking, the city does own the roadway that's just south of the property. And so that could probably be utilized in some way for on-grade parking. And also the vacant lot that's just north of the C-store and south of your road, that maybe somehow that could be incorporated into a plan, maybe additional underground parking, and leave more public space above ground, or any combination of those things. It's obviously in the early stages of the thought process. Let's go to the next one, please. So that's what we're thinking today, is a shaped building with the public plaza out in the forefront. And to the top of the screen would be a one-story building, public market, and with a terrace on top that could be shared by the public as well as people in the building. And to the right, or towards the park or the river, would be an office building.
The rest of the market would continue along the right side.
Yeah, correct, yeah. The market is everything you see there, but on the right-hand side would be the office and apartments above that. And I think we have a little slide here that gives a glimpse of that.
Just kind of a feeling of the plaza and farmers markets would feel, and just a feel.
And we haven't settled on the architecture. TVA has
Super.
been very generous with their time and time frames, and managed to put something together to just give a vision of what might be if we all work together to accomplish this. So I think that was the only slide.
That's it.
Great, you have time for some questions?
Yes.
Council, any questions? Oh, I got some. Air rights. The idea of going out to allow apartments to be built, office space to be built, depending on how successful one is, it increases the amount of parking that's necessary. First question, is the footprint big enough? How many parking places do you envision? And that's a good place to start, then I want to ask about the criteria of those.
So there's 240 in that plan. We believe that the goal would actually be that is all entirely public parking, and that the office and apartments have no first right to any of those spots. However, they would pay towards maintenance of those, of the garage itself. The key is, we've got uses that are hitting at different key points, because of the fact that your primary times for the market are gonna be evenings, weekends. You've got the office users that are not gonna be on site, because of the fact you've got a lot of the time, the apartment users are gonna wanna be gone, the office users are gonna wanna be there. There's a little bit of flow that helps with some of that use.
Parking would be controlled by the city.
Parking, that's essentially the proposal that we're making, is that, it essentially becomes the city's parking garage.
Well, cities aren't very good at that so far.
Well, there may be a public development authority that, and
Give every example, Spokane has some issues in regards to how what they did with that. So, my job here is to be a critical thinker, and if there isn't anybody here on this council that doesn't think the public market is bad, okay, I'm gonna get that.
yeah.
It's a question of how much of the city should be responsible for certain things that benefit your development as well as the community. Now, when we're talking about criteria, we should work you at this point. The three things that made it impressive, you get rid of the eyesore, it's visual, you're gonna have a lot of traffic. Okay. From a city of Richland perspective, having been here forever, you got a 7-minute traffic jam, all hell breaks loose. It's crazy as it is, but it's gonna have an impact on traffic, because if you're successful, you're gonna have a lot of people come in, and as you say, you wanna revitalize things, but people have to have a place to park. You're looking at how many spots, you say 240, was it?
240, though, the thing is, there's property that's owned by the city, and we're talking specific to this project, but there's, both the roadway that's there. One of the concepts we were discussing earlier is that we could probably easily add another 100, just simply by, where the traffic light was the entrance to the lower parking, instead of needing to take up a portion of the property. And then additionally, the city owns parking that's to the north. It currently leases to the Nutrix building. And so if that instead could be turned into additional parking that was part of this, you add easily a pretty good number.
Well, and I think the other thing that we talked we were talking to Brian Moore about when he was here, is that the city also has public parking lots directly to the north of us, the larger parking lot, and then the parking lot by your center there. And your ordinance right now allows that if you're within so many feet of that parking, that you can utilize
A ratio.
a ratio, 1:5, I believe, something like that. But, you know, so to ensure the success of everything, one of the things we might wanna think through and perhaps negotiate is that, you know, all that parking is available for all these uses. And if an apartment dweller comes in at 8 o'clock at night and it's so successful on a Friday night and they have to, you know, park and walk, we think that they would be willing to do that to live in the coolest place in the Tri-Cities.
And the other element that we've discussed in terms of planning is that one of the problems with G-Way parking is that some of the more accessible options for parking are not immediately accessible when you're on G-Way, at least not in front of mine anywhere. So if someone were to enter into the parking garage, if you were to put that entrance at the light, for example, and that was to go down and there was to be an exit onto Amon Park Drive, then you would additionally have the access to the community center parking lot, which many times has many spaces available, even when the Parkway Market and the market at the Mexican food restaurant are completely full. There's parking there usually, but people don't think of it in front of line awareness because they've gotta go all the way around to get there. And same as far as Howard Amon Park is concerned. So you drive down there, you go, okay, I can't find a spot. Well, there's two parking lots you become used to being available that aren't a terrible distance away. I mean, you're talking about a block in one direction, half a block in the other. So a pretty consistent experience for the person who's just looking for parking. They can go, okay, well, there's also a parking lot over there, there's one over there. So a little bit different than just, okay, you're trapped in this hole and now how do you get out and go find other parking lots in the neighborhood?
Pike Place has been able to be successful regardless of their lousy parking.
Well, let me speak to another opportunity for parking, but let me speak to that specific point as well. You've got a convenience store, just to the north, of the market, south, I'm sorry. And you've got a street that is a public right of way owned by the city that goes between the market site and the convenience store and then turns right and dead ends, goes absolutely nowhere. If the city can basically vacate that street and turn that into parking, that's another opportunity for parking that for the cost of pavement. You're not buying land, you're not developing structured parking and so forth.
So let me ask this question. Is the air rights dependent on the amount of parking? Because obviously it is to an extent. The parking, I'm just doing a business analysis for you
Sure.
guys. This is what you guys already considered.
Absolutely.
So you can go up more floors depending on how much parking you have, right?
Well, that and supply and demand for the product.
It's already the coolest place, you already know that.
Okay, 30 stories.
But I mean, that becomes a question, doesn't it?
Well,
It needs to
I
be-
think that has to be capped, honestly. I mean, for
Yeah,
that
I
reason.
mean, you need,
I think
it
that's
may
been
make
a
sense to, it may be justified to do a parking study, you know, to say, okay, here's the plans, how many parking spaces do we need? We've looked at that, and, you know, we think we know roughly how many parking spaces we need, and we think we can fit it within, you know, doing it underneath, doing it behind a convenience store, doing it in back of the building next door. We think that works. But, I mean, let me tell you, when I was at Pike Place, we had two very small surface lots. And, you know, Pike Place Market, we're talking about 30,000 square feet. Pike Place Market is 300,000 square feet. You know, Seattle is bigger, but it's not 10 times bigger than the Tri-Cities. We didn't build our first parking deck at Pike Place until we had 14 million customer visits a year. That's a problem that you wish you had, would be to have 14 million people coming a year to your downtown and pissing and moaning the whole way about, oh, it's terrible finding parking. That's not a deficit, that's a plus.
Just so you understand, as people who live here, when we took a look at all things George Washington Way in front of the Fillet Center, we had a lot of issues in regards to just closing that, the access, and all sorts of unique issues. So traffic studies are things that concern us.
Sure.
As I told you before we began the meeting, we can't make sorts of issues. And so we'll have to go through that process, but trust me, we will go through that process. I'll get back to you as quick as we can. I don't know if any other council members have any other ideas.
How many apartments are you talking about there?
Between 75 and 100.
And that will be a second and third level, or? will it be
Well,
a third
we've right now I think there's 86 on 3 floors in that little rendering that we showed.
Okay. Then the more you go up, the more we sell air rights, then that would be more to the cost of, what we build down below. It would have to be, more concrete, more rebar to be able to try to hold a bigger building that's going up.
Just looking at from underground.
Right.
facility.
Well, I think the answer is yes, but I think it's not great incremental dollars in the big scheme of things. And that's something that, we would be happy to have a cost breakout, and if there were extra costs incurred, then I think the development upstairs should pay for that incremental cost. It's only fair.
Very admin account.
Yeah, let me just respond to something that you had said, just as a clarification. The business plan that we're asking for to complete the planning is strictly for the public market. It is not, Mark would pay for the parking analysis for the apartments, the housing demand analysis, the economic analysis, all of the various things that relate to the private development that's happening above the public market in those areas that would be purchased would not be funded by the city and would not be described in the business plan.
And I appreciate that, but I'm a negotiator. So, any additional questions, any last comments? Anybody, last chance, other than the public who didn't get a chance to speak.
Were you gonna say something, Rick?
No.
Well, thank you very much, seriously, thank you for your time, thank you for your extended time, and, really look forward to more discussion on that, please.
We'll have a lot of questions, and we know we've got that.
Yes, thank you, and I do have one question. When are we gonna get?
Oh, yeah.
Pass those around, huh? Why don't you go ahead and pass them around?
So here's actually,